Call the meeting to order. We're all present this evening, Alyssa. The invocation this evening will be given by Randy Mitchell, pastor of the First United Methodist Church. And Chief Johnson, would you lead us in the flag salute after the invocation, please? Great.
As always, Mayor and Council, thank you for serving our community. Let us pray. God, we gather here tonight to discuss the business of this fine community. We thank you for the privilege of representing so many people in this room. Lord, tonight as we discuss issues that are diverse and complex and not always agreed upon, may we just find consensus so that this community may be bettered for all. On a night in which elections are underway across this land, Lord, we pray for wisdom, and we pray that you would bless this land with your grace. Now for this night we give you thanks and pray your wisdom among us, for we give you thanks in all things. Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, consider approval of minutes of the regular commission meeting of October 16, 2018.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ron, second by Jonathan. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 5, awards, presentations, proclamations, and organizational business. Item 5.1, present the pet available for adoption at the city animal shelter.
I can't.
Companion.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte Ringwald. I'm the adoption coordinator at Enid Animal Control, and tonight my little friend is Figaro. Whoop. He's a 4-month-old kitten. He's male and he's in pen 5. He has a little sister with him, and they're both looking for a new home. They're both really playful too. So come by and meet some of our animals. We've got plenty of dogs and cats, and we've got dogs of all ages right now. So if you're looking for a puppy or an older animal, stop by. Hi.
Get in
Thank
line.
you. Say bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.2, consensus 2020 proclamation. Steve?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, come on up here, Mrs. Woodward. Mayor, you want to join us, please? Stand here and
Okay.
face there.
Good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor and Commissioners, we have one proclamation for this evening. We have with us as our special guest, Patricia Woodward. Patricia, good evening. Came all the way from Oklahoma City to receive the proclamation. And it's in regard to the census. Can we believe another 10 years has gone by and we got to do another census? Mrs. Woodward, the mayor's office has prepared this proclamation for you. It says, whereas the new decennial census will be taken in the year 2020, and political representation to the United States House of Representatives, state legislators, and local governments is determined by the census. And whereas the census is also the basis for the distribution of many forms of intergovernmental financial assistance, and whereas the city of Enid, Oklahoma recognizes the importance and value of counting each and every resident in the 2020 census. Now therefore, Bill Shuey, Mayor of Enid, Oklahoma, hereby proclaims to support the goals and ideals of the 2020 census and encourages the community to participate in the census in order to get a complete and accurate count. And as Mayor, Bill Shuey proclaims November 6th, 2018 as Census 2020 Support and Participation Day. Congratulations, and feel free to say anything if you like.
Enid, I'm so pleased to be here. This is an awesome step
in the direction of making sure that we count everyone once and only once in the right place. That is the mission of the Census Bureau. However, you are very, very important to this count. We cannot do it without you and without the support of City Council and the mayor. And so I am very pleased on behalf of the census to receive this proclamation. One person, according to the George Washington University study, has a dollar figure of $1,675 in tax dollars that Oklahoma is eligible to receive. So you multiply times 10, and then you multiply by an average household of 2.5 or 4. And so you could see the amount of dollars that can come in to help our roads and our schools and our seniors. And so this is so very important that as the city gathers trusted voices of the community and leaders to start a complete count committee, that you would want to participate to ensure that we don't miss anyone. Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
And that concludes the presentations for this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Item 6, Community Development. Item 6.1, conduct a public hearing to take comments on a rezoning for lots 8 and 9, Block 18, Garland Addition, located at 525 South Arthur Street, from R2 Residential Single Family District to C1 Light Commercial District, to be used for Da Vinci's Coffee House. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor, City Commissioners. Good evening. A piece of the comprehensive plan is on the screen. The site that we're talking about is located right here near the intersection of Garriott and Cleveland. You can see that it is near or a part of the community center, and the crosshatch there on the north side of Garriott is identified in the comprehensive plan as an area for redevelopment. These are the narratives of that in our comprehensive plan. Primarily, community centers serve all of the city. It's more than just neighborhood centers. And then redevelopment neighborhoods are those that are should be targeted for reinvestment. C1 is the zoning district that the applicant is seeking and is the correct zoning district for a coffee shop. These are all the uses that are permitted in C1. At all rezonings, we take into consideration where the property is located, and that's identified here by the yellow box. We then look at our infrastructure to make sure that there's adequate there in road, water, and sewer. My engineering department has analyzed those, and those systems are adequate. The Planning Commission reviewed this. Their recommendation to you was to deny by a vote of 3, 2 in favor of it, and then there were 2 abstentions. So as you are aware, abstentions turned into no votes. So the Planning Commission's recommendation to you was to deny the request. Are there any questions that I can answer as staff?
For what reason, Chris?
They did not articulate that, Commissioner. That was just reflected in their vote.
I can address that. I was sitting on the board. There were again, with the abstentions, there were some individuals that believed that they had some conflicts of interest. Though they saw the benefits of it itself, they just could not vote that way. So their abstention just comes out to be a no vote. Does that clarify where? Okay.
So even after it had already been previously voted upon 3 years before that?
Yes.
And the first vote was yes?
Yes, the recommendation several years ago was to recommend approval.
What was the reason for having to go back and look at it again once it's already been approved?
This particular property is in the Garland addition, and it is deed restriction that there will not be any commercial uses. So the Planning Commission several years ago, recommendation was to approve contingent that the deed restriction was lifted. It took the applicant several years to get through district court to achieve that. That has just recently occurred, and that is why it's now moving forward. And since the time frame was so large from then to now, remember in all of our zonings, we have to notify current owners. Most likely property had changed hands in that 2 to 3 year period. So that is why the decision was to go back through MAPC. So we had current and proper notice to everybody.
Even after looking at, I've seen the map, other businesses on the outer perimeter throughout that neighborhood. I mean, would that have any type of effect on them making that decision based on the fact that they already approved it?
Well, again, they didn't tell me directly why they voted no.
Okay.
So I can't speak for them. I apologize. Anyone else? Mayor, I know there's several people signed up to speak on this. The applicant has asked if, depending on where he comes up on the sign-in list, he would like to follow his attorney and engineer. And I believe they have a presentation for you as well.
We have several signed up. I'm going to just go right down the list.
Okay.
And if I overlook somebody, help me. First one is David Keller. If you would, use the mic, and we need your name and address, please.
Excuse me, sir.
Thanks. My name is David Keller. I live at 516 South Hayes. I'm opposed to this rezoning for a number of reasons. This is not rezoning for a coffee shop. This is rezoning for C1 commercial with no restrictions beyond. There is the world's most successful and largest coffee chain within walking distance of my house now. This would put one about 200 feet closer. And if it were not successful, there's no limit within the C0 and C1 zoning what this property could be. I have a number of other concerns. Traffic. My understanding from talking to the petitioner is that he is anticipating 275 to 300 vehicles a day as a break-even point for this property. And those of you familiar with the neighborhood know there is very little egress onto Garriott. You can't get to Cleveland without cutting through a commercial property or redirecting through our neighborhood. One of the things that was listed on the slide that Mr. Bauer just showed was that this was not supposed to increase traffic through a residential neighborhood. That's part of the zoning, but I have a strong opinion that it will. There's city property to the south of Garriott already that is yet to be developed, which I would imagine is going to add traffic to what is already the busiest traffic location in town. But this particular property, because of the egress difficulties onto Garriott, is going to direct property straight through our neighborhood. That's the only way to get out of this property. There's already a commercial glut in Enid, according to the envisioned Enid plan, that's going to persist until about 2025, if I remember correctly. So there's no hardship for commercial property. And this is not part of a developed plan. I've seen the crosshatched area on that street, but the entirety of the rest of that neighborhood is still under a deed restriction. So the same rigmarole would have to go on to develop any of those properties as well. That transitional neighborhood was supposed to create walking properties and bodegas and things for people to utilize. I can already walk and get coffee in my neighborhood, so this doesn't add anything to what's available to me. And it's not going to be part of a larger development without some serious changes to the deed restrictions for that community. In my opinion, civilian as it is, this is spot zoning. To the north, excepting the Henson property that's an industrial on a railroad track, and to the east, all the way to Johnson, there's no commercial property north and east of here for blocks and blocks. It's a giant green square on the county assessor's map. It just doesn't make any sense to convert one of these properties. And again, if this venture were to go through and then fail, this can be a pharmacy. I assume it can be a dispensary. It certainly can be a bar, according to C1 zoning in Enid. I just don't see where that fits into the residential neighborhood. There's no buffer between this property and the residential properties around. There's already a commercial blight along Arthur because it's adjacent to commercial property. and converting this house to a business, I think is just going to extend that blight further into our neighborhood. Bill and I know, have spent a lot of money trying to keep our neighborhood up and our homes up, and it just doesn't make any sense to me from a planning standpoint to convert this to a commercial property. I'll close with, I have nothing against the petitioner. I have nothing against the proposed coffee shop, but that's not what this vote is. This vote is to convert this property to C1 commercial with absolutely no restrictions, and it's not part of a grander plan. Just crosshatching an area on a city map doesn't make it a plan, and there's a huge deed restriction that affects the remainder of the residential property in this neighborhood that's going to interfere with further development. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. William Andrew. Need your name and address, please.
Well, my mother named me William, but I go by Bill Andrew. I live at 524 South Hayes. And I also, as Dr. Keller mentioned, I'm in opposition to this. And I know that Commissioner Norwood, I wanted to maybe help answer some questions because we bought and lived in that neighborhood knowing there was commercial there. I've known that forever and ever and ever. I grew up here. I knew the commercial was there. I also served on the Planning Commission and was trained by the city of Enid to understand what is the right way to do commercial zoning. And it has never been, up until 2015, a plan to make this a commercial place. I've studied on your comprehensive plan, which I think is kind of fun, and it's a great idea and a suggestion. If you have an area that's blighted, then maybe we ought to figure out some way to improve that infrastructure. But this area you're putting in is adjacent to commercial, and its only reason that it's blighted is because it is adjacent to commercial. And we have, something else that I did want to point out, and I do want to ask the Chris Bauer. He didn't mention the 8% denial or whatever it was. What do you guys say when people don't want to do it? It's objection by 8%. It's actually more than that, isn't it? It included the shopping center to the west, which he called when before we went to the Planning Commission, but his address was not put down within the 300 foot, but he owns a whole shopping center. He's also opposed to it, and the reason he's opposed is it doesn't make good municipal planning. If you have a traffic, I live on Hayes. I can't even enter the highway during certain hours because it is a complete traffic mess. You add more of a traffic mess on Arthur. So the very thing that this nice plan, which I believe we could all talk about it, and we could all visit about what it might mean to my neighborhood, but we haven't done that. And so what's going to happen is you're going to redivert traffic, and they're going to have to go at least 8 blocks out of their way to get back onto that highway because they can't get on at Arthur. They can't get back on there, and so they could possibly drive through the shopping center that's privately owned. That's why that guy has called and protested this. And I happen to know he had called, and I was surprised it wasn't marked. And I asked him to call again today, and he did, because there is no good planning in what we're doing here. And I have spent a lot of time in my younger years trying to figure out good municipal planning, and it just isn't happening here. And I think if we are going to implement in neighborhoods these nice development plans that was talked about in 2015, I think the neighborhood should be involved in that and figuring out how the traffic is going to work, how we're going to walk. We're not increasing a walk opportunity here. We're actually making it worse. We're diverting traffic into a residential neighborhood, not figuring out how we can all enjoy it. I have, I think I've covered everything a lot faster. My list is longer than that, but I'm pretty much sure that I've covered what I wanted to say. And I do believe that there is, the 300-foot line is including a highway and property owned by the city, property that's owned by a shopping center that I know doesn't want it, and a few of us in the residential neighborhood. It just doesn't make good sense, and it certainly, I believe, is greater than 8% that the Planning Commission didn't mention in this meeting, but mentioned it last time. I believe it's a great deal more than that. And so I think that we all need to make sure that if we want to do good planning in creating a walking neighborhood, let's involve the walking neighborhood in creating that plan. Let's not just say, okay, this works right now. It doesn't. This plan is pages and pages. I've read them. And 2 sentences doesn't describe what is going on here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. John Hodgson, is this your, Chris, I'm sorry. Just a second, John.
I apologize to you, Mayor and Council. I should have shown this slide, and Mr. Andrew is accurate. We did receive a protest prior to the Planning Commission. That is mapped there. You see the site that's being considered is this blue square. This is the 300-foot border, and the area in red was there, this dark yellow. Those were all a part of the protest that was submitted ahead of the Planning Commission meeting. Since that time, the protest deadline for tonight's meeting was last Thursday at 5 p.m. I got additional signatures, and there were no new changes in the red area. Whoops, in the red area. But see, these are yellow crosshatches. We received more protest in this neighborhood. So within the 300-foot area, the protest is 8%, and I failed to mention that in my presentation, and thank you for letting me lift that up.
How about that shopping center? Didn't he say that there was protests lodged by them?
They were not on the protest that we received last Thursday.
Okay.
So this is what was there.
He had called before, Chris, and gave his home address, which is, his home address isn't even in the area, but he owns the shopping center, is why he had called.
We never got that, so
But he called you today, right?
I never got that call.
Okay.
And the protest is due 3 days prior to your meeting. That was last Thursday at 5.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris. John, were you supposed to follow somebody?
If my client wants me to follow somebody.
No.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. I'm not quite as tech savvy as my client, so I've handed in some notebooks with their numbered notebooks. And they have the history of what's gone on with this property since 2015. And Commissioner Norwood, I think that your questions are very to the point about what's happened with this, this property. And one thing I would address is this issue of whether the community has been involved in what's gone on with this property. And I don't want to jump in front of myself, but you've seen the pictures of the property. You know where it is, Arthur and Owen K. Garriott. What you don't know is the surrounding property and the history of the lawsuit that's gone on for some 3.5 years concerning this property. And if you can turn to, I'm going to skip around here. The first thing and I'm going to skip to is item number 6 in your notebook. And this is the issue that Commissioner Norwood addressed, and that is the September 21st, 2015 minutes of the MAPC. And item number 1, or actually it's item number 2, and the action taken, motion to recommend approval of rezoning to Mayor and Board of Commissioners contingent upon the restrictive covenant being removed by a district court action. That was seconded by Commissioner Rose and passed with a vote being recorded in favor. And Mr. Jackson wants to put in a coffee shop at this location. It's an old house. You've seen the pictures in the first part of the notebook. But Mr. Jackson did what the MAPC told him to do. He went and filed a lawsuit to have the deed restriction lifted. And this is a 1920s deed restriction. This is an old edition. It doesn't have covenants like we have in more modern subdivisions. There are deed restrictions in the covenants. And part of this goes back so far in our history that in these deed restrictions, I'm sad to say that there's restrictions that are so archaic. Persons of African-American ancestry are in these deed restrictions. That's how old these are. And in the deed restrictions, it has things about your house has to be of a certain value and has to be used as a dwelling house. But if you can turn, and the actual deed is item number 7. And I'm not happy to have to read that or even describe it, but you can read for yourself the deed restrictions we're talking about in this case. And I did not file the lawsuit. I took over the lawsuit after another law firm had filed it, and it is filed as a class action lawsuit with the class of people involved being all the homeowners within the Garland addition. And I can tell you, in looking at the history of the lawsuit, which is item number 8 in your booklet, the lawsuit was filed on April 25, 2016, and went till September 12, 2018. And as far as involvement of the community, these folks got more certified mail. This was published in the newspaper several times. I know personally that we sent them, just from my office, certified mail to every homeowner in the subdivision, at least twice. And if we look at the subdivision itself, and I'm hopping around a little bit here, but if you turn to tab 5, and we talk about the commercial uses within the subdivision or the addition. And the first one is, the picture I have is Oklahoma Floral. And I think folks are familiar. It was Oklahoma Floral, now it's Enid Property Management. That's a commercial use. In the subdivision would be at the northwest corner there on 2202 West Oklahoma Avenue. Then the second tab, we have 518 South Buchanan. That's on Garriott, and it consists of a billboard and another house that is zoned commercial, is my understanding. Mr. Bauer may know that better. It's a house next to the billboard. That's commercial also, is it not?
I believe it is.
Okay. And there are several pictures of 1714 West O&K Garriott. The billboard, I think everyone's familiar with the Allstate insurance office there at 1810 West O&K Garriott. That's Mr. Burroughs, the Nicer Guy Insurance Company. That's a commercial use. And then also on the corner, 1820 Garriott is Ella Teeter's. I think that's now a satellite shop there on the corner. And we also have this would be in the it'd be the northeast part of the subdivision, or the Garland addition, I'd call it, 408 South Buchanan, which is a weightlifting gym. And I'd submit to you that these commercial uses have been here like Mr. Andrews said, they've been here a long time. They're consistent with the community. These folks bought houses. Those commercial uses were in this addition at that time. And getting to the lawsuit, and I skipped around a little bit, the lawsuit went on for 3 years. And as I mentioned earlier, it was a class action of all the owners within the subdivision. They were given notice. The court approved certain individuals to represent the homeowners, the class representatives, and Judge Dennis Laddick was appointed as the presiding judge. The lawsuit progressed, and a settlement was reached. Mr. Jackson, in good faith with the homeowners, their representatives in the subdivision, met with them. The lawsuit, as it was originally filed, requested C3 zoning. He agreed to C1 zoning, as you've heard tonight. I don't think that a bar is allowed in C1 zoning. Is that correct? So we're not talking about a bar. We're not talking about a flip of property. If my client wanted to flip this property, he would have kept the C3, and he would not have negotiated with the landlord, with the homeowners in the subdivision. As part of this negotiation, it's limited to this property only, the C1, and there were other concessions he made. Originally, he wanted to, there was this discussion about traffic off of Garriott, and he agreed that he would not do that.
So how is the settlement, so there's not a journal entry of the court? I mean, how did that,
If I
how did the
can,
case get resolved?
That's a good question. If you can flip to item 9 in your booklet. And that is the November 15, 2017 explanation of what the lawsuit was and the rights of the property owners. And this, Commissioner Rozelle, along with a notice, was sent to every owner within, every homeowner within the Garland Addition. So this idea that folks haven't been involved with this process is just not accurate.
Okay, but the question I have is, were the parties that are objecting tonight parties to the lawsuit?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
So yes, they were.
Yes.
Were they parties to the settlement?
Correct. Well,
That's
what happened
mechanically at work.
What happened is a little bit complicated, so I'll put on my lawyer hat for a second. And that is, a settlement was reached with the representatives of the class. At that time, the class representative, the attorneys that represented the class, said to Judge Laddick, the presiding judge, that they had a conflict of interest because they felt some people were in favor and some were against. At that time, Judge Laddick separated into 2 classes. So Mr. Andrew and Mr. Keller, they had their own counsel. When, after the settlement, there's a fairness hearing that was set. All the homeowners were given the explanation of the lawsuit, and you can see on tab 9, if you'd read through that, the second page of it is the settlement terms that we were describing. The land use restriction of the 1920 deed was declared unenforceable. The settlement only applies to 525 South Arthur Street in Enid. The plaintiff originally requested C3 zoning, but agreed to C1 zoning. My client met with these homeowners, addressed their concerns, and a settlement was reached. The fairness hearing was sent. Everyone was notified. And as far as your question about a journal entry, that's included on tab 10. And here we have the journal entry of judgment from the District Court of Garfield County, dated July 16, 2018. That was our fairness hearing.
Okay, let me stop you right, just because I got to the part where I think I have a question for Will. Okay, just so I understand, can the district court make a zoning determination?
No.
Okay. So the zoning determination language in the journal entry that it shall be, or maybe a C1 has no bearing on what we do tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. But John, was the settlement that reached with the parties that were involved, the settlement was reached with the understanding that, I mean, the part of the bargain was that it would be C1 instead of C3. Is that correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
the journal entry on page 8, the last page of the journal entry, specifically states, pursuant to such settlement agreement, which is approved by the court and made part of this order, the zoning designation as defined by Chapter 7, Article B of the City Code and Ordinance of Enid, Oklahoma, C1 Light Commercial District, relating to the subject property shall be C1 Light Commercial zoning.
But this isn't a resolved issue by the court. They're taking another bite of the apple, even though it was already settled. But it's not res judicata. I mean, we are.
Well,
is that correct, Will? Sorry, Will. Question. Sorry, talk to you, John.
I believe Mr. Hodgson believes it is. The city attorney's office believes it isn't.
Well, you're my attorney in here, so who cares what he says? But that's so. This is not a resolved issue of the court, but it was the term of a settlement agreement.
That is accurate.
Okay, go ahead.
At which time, the folks that have spoken tonight were represented by counsel.
And participated in the settlement? They participated in the settlement agreement or through their counsel?
The fairness hearing, what happened is all individuals were sent notice. If you objected to the settlement, you had a deadline to file an objection.
Okay.
And certain people filed objections. There were there were two classes formed, one in favor, one against. They had their own attorneys. We came to the fairness hearing. People that are here tonight came to the fairness hearing to talk to the judge. I would note the two individuals who are here tonight objecting did not come to the fairness hearing at that time. And the court approved it.
Okay.
Now, your question, does the court have authority to zone? It's a good question. That was part of our settlement, and that's part of this journal entry.
But the city of Enid wasn't a participant in the settlement.
City of Enid wasn't a participant.
So we're not bound.
But let's talk about it. What happens if the city happens to deny it? The appeal's right back to the district court of Garfield County, who's already approved it.
No, it's a good question.
So,
the city attorney says otherwise, but it's a really good question.
well, had it not been part of an agreed resolution, and if you look at the approval signatures on the September 12, 2018 journal entry, which is tab 10, it reflects counsel for both sides signed off on that order. So
Mike and Stephen were representing the two classes?
I represented the plaintiff and the subclass in support of the settlement.
Okay.
And Mr. Roberts and Cameron represented the subclass opposed to the settlement.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Complicated.
I have a question for you. Has everyone that live in that area, did they get a copy of this? Did they read what this states as far as the explanation of the lawsuits and the right of the properties of the owner?
The explanation of the lawsuit is, I've provided you with 3 pages of it. But attached to this was the C1 designation and everything that encompassed, and the C3, and Judge Sladek also required that I prepare a notice. The notice was about 14 pages long. This was a huge mailing to all these homeowners in the subdivision, telling them, you've got a deadline. If you don't object by that deadline, that's it. And some folks objected. A lot of them came and spoke in favor of it. No one appeared to object to the settlement at the fairness hearing? Not a soul. So you have this decision. We've been at this 3 years. These homeowners knew what was going on with this request for a coffee shop. And we look right across the street, Lahoma Courts, where the city has spent millions to develop that property, right across the street. And you have Nick Jackson, a local business owner, employer. He's not here asking for any money. He's not here asking for any handouts. He just wants the city to do what it promised to do, conditionally approved if he got the deed restriction lifted. He spent, I don't even want to tell how much he's spent in this 3-year lawsuit, between paying another law firm to file it and then me to finish it up. It's a lot of money. So the city tells him, you've got to do this to get your zoning. He goes and has this deed restriction lifted, and then he comes back to MAPC, and I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I asked my client to tell me when it came to the MAPC, and we had a little lack of communication there, but something happened. But regardless of that, I think it's a little disingenuous for folks who didn't come to the fairness hearing in this 3-year-long lawsuit to show up to MAPC after all that's decided and say, well, now we got a problem with it now. So that's my take on it. You've got the traffic issues. Chris Burdick with the Envirotech, he's here to address that. I'd submit to the traffic issues involved with the little coffee shop are going to be minuscule compared to what happens with Lahoma Courts once that's developed. And again, this is a young man who's coming to the commission. He's not asking for any money, any handouts. He just wants to start a business and employ folks here in Enid. And he's met with these homeowners. He's addressed their concerns. I understand there are folks here that have spoken in good faith about their objection. I would submit to the commission that Dr. Keller and Mr. Andrew can't even see this property from their home. And you look across the street, you look at the character of the of the area, liquor store across the street, Tokyo House on the other side. They serve liquor till late at night or beer. We got a CBD shop next door across the street. We got Lahoma Courts across the street where the city's pumping
5002 Deerfield Avenue, which is my in-laws' address. And we own a home in this area. And when we bought Da Vinci's Coffee House, I was 3 months pregnant with that little blonde running around. And I could walk to Subway and walk to Starbucks, of course, but I had dreamed that we could live in an area where we could walk to a local business like this. So I thank you for your consideration. We want to do everything in our best power to ensure that this stays a gem in this neighborhood. We love this neighborhood. We love these homes. We want to make it beautiful and lovely for this community. We all have the same goal of making this a lovely area. And so just thank you for hearing our case. And I just appreciate my husband. He's really shown me what it means to reach out, build community, make friends with our neighbors. We feel so supported by this neighborhood. We do have objectors, but so many people have told us how much they love us, want us to be there, and I feel that the community that we've built has added value to my life, and hopefully will add more value to this neighborhood. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Karen Storm.
Thank you for allowing me to address you. I am a class member.
Need your name and address, please.
Beg your pardon?
Need your address, please.
My current address is 1772 Denham Lane, but I lived at 420 South Hayes in the addition until July. I bought that home in 1989. It is a wonderful, Enid is a wonderful place, and that is a wonderful community. After I retired from Enid State School in 1999, I moved to Colorado, and I'm a speech pathologist, went to work on the Navajo Nation in their schools and worked for several years. I moved back here in 2014 because I kept my home. I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And when I came back to town, I already knew about Da Vinci's Coffee. It's awesome. So I went out there for coffee and I said, guys, I want you to put a place closer to my house. And they said, as a matter of fact, we're working on that. And I said, let me be part of it. My home is virtually the same distance as Dr. Keller's and Mr. Andrews from the coffee house. None of our homes face the coffee house. Yes, Garriott is very busy, but Garriott is very busy right now. While I was in Colorado, I got to experience that corner mom and pop coffee shop. The one built in the old Tudor home that had been remodeled. People were there. They walked. They bicycled there. They brought their dogs. They brought their kids. They checked their email. They read books. They talked with each other. They got a bite to eat. Many of these homes had the big established trees outside with tables. And I said to Nick, I've already got the fever. I've been there. I've been to these places in Colorado. I want this so much for this community. And I, too, value that addition and how those homes look. Nobody's going to buy that home and have their family live in it. It fronts on to Garriott. But I think it would be an absolutely awesome place for a coffee shop that would really bring a wonderful or increase the wonderful ambiance in this community. I hope you will consider that.
Thank you. Alfred Bamberg III.
My name is Alfred J. Bamberg. I live at 514 South Garfield here in Enid, Oklahoma. Mayor Shuey, Council, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I would like to speak in favor of the proposal of the rezoning. My wife and I have been involved with this project from its conception. Initially, when the proposal was put before us, we voted against it, I'll be honest. But in the process of getting together with Mr. Jackson and speaking to him about it and hearing his proposal for the coffee shop, his desire for the neighborhood and what he wanted to do, he won us over. He gave us a very clear, concise, and emotional proposal to benefit the community. And I understand Mr. Andrews and Mr. Keller's concerns about the traffic concerns there. but I live next door to it, and I'm not concerned. I think it will add a positive benefit to the neighborhood. So thank you very much for hearing us. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Chris Burdick.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Chris Burdick with Envirotech Engineering, representing Mr. Jackson from an engineering standpoint. One of the big, I think, items has been traffic. While we understand that there's going to be some increase there, feel like that we we have a preliminary layout plan for the property that some of you guys may have in the back of that book. I think they maybe have included that. The last page. And there's been a couple minor modifications, but nothing that would affect the property itself. But Nick has really been willing to accommodate some of those issues with traffic, giving up the existing, there's an existing drive coming off from Owen K. Garrett, be it an old driveway, but it is still an access point that could be fought for. I mean, it's there, it exists, but he has been willing to give that up. The other thing that we've done with that preliminary layout is we've pushed that drive as far north on this property as we can to get it away from that intersection of Garrett and Arthur. Another thing that he's looked at is in the layout of the drive-through area, we've pushed the pickup area to the north of that property, the ordering area more towards the southeast corner to allow for adequate stacking of vehicles in there to keep them obviously off from Arthur. We all know what McDonald's on Willow looks like in the mornings, so we don't want that kind of an issue to happen here. And so those are some of the things that he's taken the step to try to alleviate some of that traffic. We all have talked about Garrett being busy, and it's going to get busier in the next few years. But I think Arthur's a developed street. I mean, it's a widened street. It's not a two-lane blacktop road. We feel like while it may increase a little bit of traffic on Arthur if people go around the other way, there's nothing really to say that a lot of his traffic won't come off Garrett and head north from there. You know, not every person that's going to come in here is going to turn around and try to get back out on Garrett, I guess is kind of what we're looking at. A couple other just minor issues is that number one, there's existing utilities here. There's fire protection, there's water, there's sewer. This is a perfect site that the city's not going to, that the landowner's not going to have to extend a bunch of utilities to, and the city's going to have to take it on for maintenance. It's already there. So there's that aspect. We're not adding miles of utilities for the city to pick up. And the final point basically is it's an infill project. You know, it's an infill project that we're all about. That's what we want, you know, instead of sprawl out west and there again, extending roads for maintenance and extending utilities for maintenance. And in our feeling, you know, anything that's on Garrett nowadays almost needs to be commercial. I mean, it's just, nobody's, as they said before, nobody's going to buy that house and put a family in there, not with the traffic and not with the situation that's there. So that's kind of the traffic part of it. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to address.
Since there's a drawing rendered on this, on the drawing, looking at the alleyway, that easement of the alley. On this drawing, I see parking that's going to go across. There's about 8 parking spaces.
Yes, sir.
Will there be a curb and gutter put up there so that no one would be able to access in?
Sure. And we will also have, along the north side of the property and the east side of the property, there will be screen fencing, either a 6-foot wood fence or whatever screening fits the city ordinance will be required to do that. And I will also say, he has, at some level, embraced the sidewalk issue. He knows he's going to, get hit with that, and
he said, you know, we got to do it, we got to do it. The other thing that does, there again, Gary, it's busy, but it will tie potentially this neighborhood to Lahoma Courts in a pedestrian type situation if those sidewalks are put in and they get continued, you know, down the road. So that's, he's been very, very easy to convince of those kind of items, so.
Any other questions?
Can we turn the air conditioner on?
Do what?
Can we turn the air conditioner on?
Thank you. Thank you. Did I overlook anybody that signed up that hasn't spoken?
Mayor, could I add something about this lawsuit issue that he spent a lot of time that I never mentioned or talked about? Is that possible?
Get one shot, Bill.
Yeah, fair enough.
You've had it.
That's fair.
Are you ready for me now, Mr. Mayor, Council?
Are you signed up?
Oh, no, sir, I'm not signed up. But I was not signed up at the MAPC meeting. I wasn't aware that I had to write my name down.
He's the property owner.
I am the property.
I know he's the property owner. Go ahead.
Okay. I know it's...
Anyone else besides?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You have the floor.
My name's Nick Jackson, and I live at 5002 Deerfield. My wife and I are the owners of Da Vinci's Coffee House. I know it's been a long night, and you guys have a lot ahead of you, so I'm going to keep this as short as I can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. This is the property here, Arthur. Just the concepts, I think what I have to share will just be a brief overview of what has been said, just to hit some of those main points. The things I'd like to share with you, the ideas are that the rezone of this property is the most beneficial decision for the city of Enid and for the Garland Addition neighborhood also. That the rezoning impact on traffic, both on Highway 412 and within the Garland Addition neighborhood, are minimal at most. That the 233 plus owners of the neighborhood are generally aware and are not opposed, and why also why the city of Enid should welcome the rezone. So here's the property. It's been difficult to rent. There actually is someone there now. They tried for 2.5 years to rent it out and had difficulty doing that because of its location to 412. It is an eyesore to the neighborhood and also to the city of Enid as it sits, and that's why I feel like it's best used as commercial. Did I do something wrong here, Mr. Burdick?
You need the arrow. Can you help him back up, Dana? I'm working on it. Thank you.
Great. I'll. Mm-hmm.
As you proceed.
I think we're up.
Here you go. Just press this for your next
Gotcha.
slide. There you go.
All right. Okay, this is the Garland Addition. What you see there and outlined in red is the entire neighborhood, and then the small red boxes there are commercially zoned properties that are already in the neighborhood. This is an outline of when those properties were zoned commercially. So with a rezone, if you can see the blue dot there, that's the property. And then properties were rezoned as early as 1971 and as late as September of 2014. Here again is just a helicopter view of the properties. You can see Westgate Plaza, Sunset Plaza, Indian Hills Shopping Center, and of course across the street, Lahoma Courts. We had two opposers, Mr. Andrew and Mr. Keller, at the MAPC meeting, so you'll see their properties there also. This is to indicate the traffic counts. This is a traffic map of Enid and surrounding areas. You see Waukomis there in the south, up to North Enid. The numbers are traffic counts. The red box is 23,000, and the blue dot there is the subject property. So it is the highest trafficked stretch of highway in northwest Oklahoma. This is another traffic map from AADTtrafficcounts.com. These are showing the years. 10 years back, we had about 18,000 people driving by on that spot, and as late as 2016, there were 22,900, about 23,000. This is just to emphasize why a family is not going to live in this spot. The door faces a highway where 23,000 people are driving by daily, and the property sits dilapidated. Okay, so this is our concept. We want it to look like a home. We're not interested in heavy commercial appearance. We want to improve the look of the property, both for the neighborhood and for the city. We will keep the structure and renovate. New roof, siding, windows, and the lot. Mr. Hodgson touched on the MAPC meeting. I did get a conditional approval for a C3 zoning at that MAPC meeting. Of course, the condition was that we remove the deed restriction. Just wanted to know that that night there was a protest. There were about 55 people who had signed. Only 2 of them showed up that evening. And I went to all of those people and spoke with them and got them, with the exception of about 7, and spoke with them and got signatures in favor of the rezone. That was the beginnings of the canvassing the neighborhood and knowing these people. As Mr. Hodgson said, we had, there have been at least 8 to 10 notices to the neighborhood. 6 of those were MAPC required within the 300-foot radius, and there were 4 certified mailings that went out to the neighborhood, letting people know what was going on and asking them, calling them to action, asking them for objection if they objected. The response that we got were 10 filed objections of the 233 properties. 29 of those actually filed approvals and said, yes, please do something with this property that's lining our neighborhood. And 194 people did not respond. To put that in a chart or a graph that we could, a little easier to see, we have 233 properties. We have 10 who disagreed. That's 4.3. And we had 95.7 who did not object through the certified mail and through the process, or who actually 29 of those approved. So for the court settlement, and I'll do it the best legally as I can, we were at a C3 zoning. We decided to negotiate with 4.3%, the 10 property owners, and ask them, what will it take for you all to accept this rezone? And that 10%, I'm sorry, 4.3%, including Mr. Keller and Mr. Andrew, said, if you will rezone it to C1, we will settle, we will agree not to oppose you on this. So we devalued the property and brought it from a C1, the petition from a C3 down to a C1 to appease this 4.3% of the property owners. Mr. Bauer has talked to us a little bit about what can happen in a C1. This is that court decision that the settlement agreement is reached, and this process is fair, reasonable, and adequate, and should be made in order of the court for the C1 light commercial. And these are the signatures of the council that represented both the opposing side, that 4.3, and the approving side. As Mr. Burdick touched on the site plan, this was 3 years ago, and I believe the MAPC did not go with this in the last time because they didn't have any of this information. I was ill-prepared, but tonight I've tried to package this into a story that's easily understandable. I sat down with Mr. Burdick 3 years ago. I said, I'd like to put a coffee shop in this location, and I would like access from Garrett because that's the best way to get the most business. Mr. Burdick said, I don't know if the city's going to go for that. I said, draw it up that way anyway. I want to shoot for what's best. Then I went to Mr. Hitt in the engineering department and said, Mr. Hitt, here's what we'd like. He said, I don't know about this. Of course, he couldn't deny me, but he said, you'll do a lot better if you can remove this ingress-egress on Arthur and eliminate the ingress-egress on Garrett. So that's what we did. We brought it back to Mr. Hitt. He said, I think this looks good. Then we presented to the MAPC, and they seemed to like what they saw, and that's why they chose to rezone it on the C3 side. Clarification, we are here to ask for a C1 zoning. How'd I do? Was that pretty quick? I'm almost done. My final points here. The things that I've hoped to convey tonight are, one, that the property is not fit to be residentially zoned. Number two, that both the neighborhood and the city will benefit from this rezoning action and the improvements that we make to this property. That the overwhelming majority of the neighborhood is not opposed to this rezone, even after having been given substantial notice. That we negotiated with the few objectors in the neighborhood and came to an agreement. That the traffic concerns have been adequately addressed by the city officials in the engineering department and also the experts at Envirotech. I guess the last note that I have is that I did sit down with Mr. Hitt last week. We reviewed this, and he came up with the same conclusion that he did 3 years ago. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
I have one question. It's a legal question, I guess. I don't, I know that a lot of time had passed in between the original zoning, the original agreement where they said if you can get the deed restriction lifted, then we'll agree to be in favor, the MAPC. I guess I don't know where it's written, or is it written anywhere that you have 6 months, you have 7 months, you have 9 months, you have a year? And a follow-up question is, unless the petitioner let it sit on hold for 3 years, which I don't think was the case. I think it was an active case for 3 years. I don't know that we ought to penalize somebody because of the, how do I want to say it, speed of justice that our court system provides.
I think the issue in this case is that we as a city have to provide notice to the property owners in the area. Okay. And because of the length of time between when the MAPC, which is an advisory body only in nature, they can only make a recommendation to you, and ultimately the city commission makes the determination on zoning, that we have to provide notice to those individuals that this property is changing, and we have the potential to change the zoning to this property. And the length of time between the original notice and the next notice that they would have received from the city is such a great amount of time that there are individuals who would not have received a notice had it come to the city commission without going back through the MAPC process to notify them of the zoning change, potential zoning change.
Do we know how many properties were sold in this division during that 3 years?
I don't have that information in front of me, so.
Thank you.
But the fact that it didn't come back, the fact that after the first MAPC meeting, the fact that it never came to the commission is not the fault of the property owner. So I think that's a fair thing to note. It never came before this body. Right. So he can't really be penalized for something that didn't happen. I mean, by no fault of his, first of all.
I would not disagree with that assessment.
So it's not really fair to say that they're only an advisory board, because we were never advised of this situation until the most recent MAPC meeting. So
that all changed tonight.
Well, I'm just saying it's not fair to characterize it that they're only an advisory commission, but we didn't ever get advised, I mean, in that instance.
We're going to move on to item 6.2. Consider the rezoning of lots 8 and 9, Block 18, Garland Addition, located at 525 South Arthur Street, from R2 Residential Single Family District to C1 Light Commercial District to be used for Da Vinci's Coffee House.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Ben, second by Jonathan. Further discussion? Please cast your vote.
Yes!
Motion carries 5-2. You all may be.
Sign of relief, some post, right? I'm sure your DVR.
No, I'm just hitting refresh.
There is nothing coming, and I think you guys have done it.
Yeah, I'm just, you know,
Absentee ballots 2 weeks.
hitting refresh, just hitting refresh. No, this is Oklahoma. Just, it's early. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
no one has
Yeah.
voted yet. It's, early voting is in. Steps ahead. It'll, that was the election.
I got you. I'm not mad at you. Yeah. 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 I just, for me, if we're gonna commercialize that,
Susceptible to.
let's get a chance. To outside.
State is.
It's like my little
A fire marshal in there,
system.
and I'm sure they.
I mean, all right, hurry up, folks.
You know,
I think we're.
some people like to see the action. Yeah, some people really like to see the action. I feel sorry.
Nick? Yeah.
Goes off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get real close to the table.
Yeah, Nick.
I've been saying, why in the hell is it not?
Nice.
Wow.
Fun job.
Extra credits, not.
I think he got his.
Now you know what
Oh, God.
you can't believe how much was into the beginner. I need it.
Is that everybody?
Vitamins.
Okay, fine.
That it?
Should be it.
Item 6.3, conduct a public hearing to take comment on the rezoning of property described as lots 1 and 2, Block 13, Rock Island Heights Edition, and lots 6 through 10, Block 17, Southern Heights, 2nd Edition, located at 301 East Iowa Avenue, from R2 Residential Single Family District to R7 Residential Multifamily District. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners.
We do have a few people signed up after.
We
you
do. I'll be
finish.
brief. I only have one comment. This is back before you because I made a mistake. I did not get the notice published in the newspaper. We have corrected that, and that's why we're back before you this evening. Everything that I presented to you last time is the same. Are there any questions of staff? Thank you.
I got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Submission of documents. Are we still using the same petitions from previous?
You're talking about protest petition?
Protest, excuse me, yeah, protest petitions.
The right person that can answer that would be Carol.
Okay.
The information that's in the agenda is based on the last protest we received from the September 6th meeting. We received a protest petition on Friday, and we looked it over, and it looks like it's the same protest petition. And so it's the same as last time.
Okay.
Are you saying one person?
No, I'm saying there was it's in the agenda item, there was 65 signatures on the protest petition. Of the 65 signatures, 7 represented property owners with 19.2% of the property. The state law says that the protests need to be in 3 days before the hearing, it doesn't indicate that the protests go stale.
Thank you. You had some,
Was there a petition submitted by the other side, by the applicant?
No. But I believe they're going to show you something this evening.
Fantastic.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Thank you.
Jonathan?
Not yet.
Okay. We have a list, and we're going to go right down the order. First person would be Ronald Skip Kelly. Need your name and address, please.
Gerald, can we please?
It's Attorney Ronald Skip Kelly, 205 Northwest 63rd, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Mayor, City Council. To the council, I just listened to the planning director, and I believe there may be just a little bit of difference in reference to what was here before this council on September the 6th as to where we are today. As you all recall, that on September the 6th, we referenced to a rezoning application for multifamily, for a treatment facility, multiple family facilities, transitional living facilities, a halfway house, and a housing or facility that may be used for medical or non-medical detoxification. And the application was submitted on May the 21st of 2018 with a purpose stated that it was the refuge at the well. And of course, it's attached to that as far as the purpose. Since that time, since the initial vote was declared null and void, a new notice was presented in reference to the application. And in that application, it clearly stated that the purpose of the rezoning for multifamily was R2 from a single family R2 district to R7 residential multifamily district. And then it states to be used for women's transitional housing by renovating the south existing building into a boarding house not to exceed 12. Now, it is clear that there is a single subject law under the Constitution in the state of Oklahoma. And in this single subject, it states that a title cannot and should not be diverse in which it cannot be clearly understood what the straight and clear purpose is. The original application stated that it was a women's transitional housing, that under the state statute, there is a specific definition for a transitional housing program. There is also supported transitional housing programs and the standard traditional housing program. Boarding houses, by clear definition of this ordinance, the city's ordinance, Black's definition, Webster's definition, basically states that it is a place where individuals lodge and eat for pay, that an individual can come and go as long as it does not exceed 12 individuals, minimum of 3, not a maximum of 12. And so therefore, you have either a traditional housing for the purpose of what this application was for, or what's the purpose of adding a boarding house that is a come-and-go setting and environment that an individual is not under any control factors other than they pay to stay, they pay to eat. And I think this is a continuation in reference to the vagueness and the ambiguity as it exists in reference to the application. Would further state that upon the applicant's submission of the application, prior to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission receiving, prior to this council being advised and receiving this information, the permits for the rebuild and the remodeling of this project was granted, and as we speak today, all those permits have been activated, and that the remodel of this project for the sole purpose of what they drove, the drawn site plan, which stated that it was to house women or bedrooms for a transitional housing facility, had been granted and completed. And so we are here with a project that was submitted for a specific purpose prior to any approval by the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, prior to any approval of this council, that had already been completed for that purpose, which makes you wonder and raises the question of how did we get here? How did you get to a project that has had to be renamed and then come back on this agenda? And as you see on the agenda today, it states a transitional living center. There is no mention of the boarding house. And I can only think that we have got to this point because of some information that has been provided under the open records request, in which some have been given an entitlement or a pass. And I'll just read to show you what I base that on. And this is based upon the applicant's application for the PUD in 2015. The look and feel of this neighborhood is very important to us. We are increasingly more invested in this neighborhood than your average Joe. We have chosen this neighborhood specifically to plant our ministry's roots, and of course, as you are aware, we just built a 10,000 square foot training center in order to impact our city. Needless to say, we care deeply about this neighborhood. Not only will we be improving the quality of the neighborhood and bringing a sense of ownership to a very dilapidated and forgotten community, we are feeling an urgent need that is critical to the success of men and women that are truly starting over. This was immediately granted in reference to the PUD without any notice, without any requirement in reference to the transitional housing facility notice under the statute, because it was misstated for the use at that time. So now you have a residence at 302 East Iowa who property line is literally 30 feet from or less from the back door of this facility. This building has been sitting vacant based upon the last records of 2008 with no use. It has never been used for any housing. It's never been used for any type of boarding facility. It's just been a vacant building after the church abandoned the church. And now we come to this situation where what we have is an application that is outside of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has not been amended to address this particular project. And so under the spot zoning laws that has been defined by the United States Supreme Court and courts all over the United States, which clearly states that where the zoning is for a particular purpose for a particular individual to engage and to enhance the profits of one individual against the common welfare of the citizenry, then it's a spot zoning. And to put any type of facility that houses for pay in the back door of another residence is only to satisfy that individual's needs, not to satisfy the common good of the community or the general welfare of the community. And briefly, I would say this, that the city has not been provided any analytical data that states that there is a crisis need in reference to a housing facility in this community. There has not been any information that supports this program. Matter of fact, the last presentation by the applicant, it made reference to women who were coming from bad life situations of prostitution. And in the open records request, I asked for the Enid Police Department, how many arrests have you had of prostitution since 2008 to today? And it was 3, which makes one wonder, what is the purpose? The last statement I have to clear up is this, which goes back to the spot zoning. There's 2 buildings at this corner. This council and nobody else would have any control over what happens and how it happens at either one of these buildings when you change from R2 to R7 for that particular building. And it's not consistent with the comprehensive plan, because then the individuals who own property across the street, do they get to rezone theirs for a different purpose other than an R2? And if that's the case, then why would we have a comprehensive plan which states that your zoning must be consistent? And if there's inconsistency in reference to it, or variance, which a variance would be different, but you would amend the comprehensive plan. So if the church gets rezoned, the building to the south gets rezoned, who's to say what could ever happen to the building that's the church? Because there's no statement in reference to what it's going to be rezoned for. And so to that, we are strongly against the applicant's rezoning application from rezoning this property, this particular property, from R2 to R7. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony Blackburn.
My name's Anthony Blackburn. I live at 1709 South Baker, same neighborhood. Been a resident there for 19 years. A lot of you have already heard this before 2 months ago, but I'll briefly remind you. My wife grew up down there. My father-in-law grew up down there. When we were clearing up the deed for the land that he gave us, and it had a deed going back to abstract. We had to go back to when Oklahoma became a state. His family's been down there that long. And when Jeremiah first came down there, about 2.5 blocks down the street to where he's at now, at the Mercy House, the Oasis House, I opposed it. And I opposed it because I have 6 children. And I was afraid. I was thinking they're going to pump in 22 criminals right down the street from my family, and I didn't want nothing to do with it. I didn't want it in my neighborhood. Now, I'm a Christian, and I try to share my faith with others, but I was scared. And what stopped me in my tracks was, there's an individual in this room, Pastor Wayne Bland. When he saw me here opposing it at this meeting, he goes, let me introduce you to Jeremiah. I mean, I never met him personally. And Jeremiah told me, he said, why don't you sit on the Oasis board? And if you say no, then it's no. Because I want you to be a part of what we're doing. We didn't talk to the community like we were supposed to. And you know something? He was better in his word. And those people they brought in there, they weren't violent criminals. They were people who were just looking for a second chance. And this individual, I mean, just because someone isn't arrested for prostitution doesn't mean there hasn't been a lot of prostitution in this town. There's lots of unreported crimes that occur in my neighborhood. You know, there was folks that were in a house next to us. The police were over there circling around that house, and they used my Suburban to protect themselves while they had guns drawn on that house. Fortunately, no one fired a shot, but it happened. Half a block down the street, someone moved in a trailer. It didn't even bother to level it out. It was just kind of lopsided there. And I kept smelling chemicals. Me and my family, we called people, and to my knowledge, nothing was done about it until one evening it exploded. It ended up being a meth lab. And all this was before Jeremiah came down there, so they're saying we're going to bring in bad elements. I'm here to say the bad elements are there already. This individual may be in Oklahoma City now. I am down there now. And I've seen how it was. And I can tell you now it is better. Because there's neighbors that used to just not talk. We used to not talk to each other. For the same reason we were. My father-in-law, he bought land all around where our houses was as a barrier to protect ourselves. If you don't believe me, drive by my house, corner of Baker and Moore Street. You'll see a double-wide trailer and empty lots all the way around it. We were that scared. And I see this guy going down the street offering free hot dogs to people. Kids down the street that used to be the terror of the neighborhood in the New View apartments. He's got those guys playing volleyball. They're doing a community garden, a big giant cross down the street. I see that every day I walk out the front door of my house. And I'm thinking, this is better. I don't feel so bad about letting my kids play outside now. It's safer. If you ask him for proof. Proof's in the pudding. He has already proven he can do this successfully for the men. There are ladies in the same situation who can use the same help. And we have an opportunity to offer this help. Yeah, they may not have been arrested for prostitution. It doesn't mean it ain't going on. The Lord has really opened up my eyes by helping him out down there. I've had my older sons down there laying a hand. As a matter of fact, when they opened up the Mercy House, one of my sons sitting here is going to be there helping check those people in. It's gotten me out of my comfort zone to where I feel like I'm making a difference now. I would love to see this continued. And yes, there is a need. These folks, just because you can quote statistics all day long. I have seen it. I have no statistics, but my eyes don't lie. I want to encourage you, gentlemen. Join us. Support us in this. There is a real problem, and there's already been improvement. Help us to continue this. I thank you for your time, gentlemen and ladies. And I pray that you will do the right thing.
Thank you. Terry Cross.
My name's Terry Cross, and I live at 314 North 19th. I work at Light VMS as a dispatcher. I went to prison almost 14 years ago. I've been back home in the community for over 11 years now. I went to a transitional home with a lot of rules and requirements. The only thing I had to do was participate and follow the rules. Mandatory church, small groups, substance abuse. I had to go to AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery. I had to participate in budgeting, finance, parenting, general life skills, and I was also held accountable of who I went around, where I went, and what I did. I also I was required to volunteer in the community at different outreaches. One of the first ones that I participated in the first year, our church put on a appreciation for law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders. I got to serve hamburgers to some of the officers that had arrested me previously. I've worked with transitional housing and reentry for over 10 years. I did jail ministry at Garfield County Jail for 7 years. I'm DOC badged and have been doing prison ministry for over 8 years. I've built relationships with probation and parole, different parole officers, case managers, program directors, and across the state at different prisons. Whatever material I've obtained, resources, connections, I have told Jeremiah it would be available to him, Forgotten Ministries, and Refuge at the Well. The reality, these women are coming back to our community. We can either try and help the ones that want to change, or we can let them go back to their old friends, their old places, and their old habits, reoffending, going back to prison, and costing us, the taxpayers, anywhere between $16,000 and about $26,000 a year for each offender. Pretty certain without transitional home for me to go to, I would have returned to criminal life and behavior, not because I wanted to, but because it was the only way I knew how to survive. These women are not bad people. They just made bad choices, and now they need help breaking free of the vicious cycle, someone to give them a chance, a hope, and a refuge. Everything that I am that is good in me, all the glory, all the honor goes to my Father in heaven and Jesus Christ. There was a multitude of people that the Lord worked to and was vessels that helped me change my lifestyle. This is an opportunity we can come together as a community and help these women. Like I said, there's people here that have probably been in the backseat of police cars for different reasons. Doesn't make them bad people, just made, the reality they made bad choices. And there's probably other people in this room that made bad choices that never got caught. I'm thankful I got caught, I went to prison, and I got to come back to the community I offended in, and I'm trying to make a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Mickey Little, you signed up, but is this the item you want to speak to? Rezoning? Yes. I know your name, but I don't know your address.
To tell you. I live at 32 Butterfly Creek Boulevard in Edmond, Oklahoma. However, I was born and raised in Enid, Oklahoma, and my family owned land here up until December of 2017. We owned the whole city block. I am not opposed to what these people want to do. However, the things that they're talking about are great, but why would they put that home back up to someone's home? They could find other areas that probably would be better suited for what they're trying to do. And I speak from a professional point of view. I was a probation and parole officer for 29 years and a mental health psychiatric social worker for 5 years. And I can tell you, corrections and mental health on the streets as probation and parole, yeah, we build relationships with you, but however, they don't go hand in hand. Officers do not counsel. They counsel them about the crimes that they done, but they don't talk to them about the drugs, alcohol. Somebody needs to be there that's doing that. That just doesn't do it. And I can tell you, as somebody that I can testify that when I left corrections and went to mental health, when I came back to corrections, I had to initiate officers and get them to try to understand what's going on between the drug and alcohol and the law enforcement. However, some worked, some didn't. But my concern and my question is, why would you want to back it up to someone's home? There's got to be other spots in other areas that would be more appropriate for what you're trying to do. So that's what I feel as somebody that's worked in this field, both fields, that I just don't think it's a good deed to put it right in somebody's back door when they have children and things going on. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Wilbur Flynn.
Wilbur Flynn, 222 South Keystone, Enid, Oklahoma. We thank you all for allowing us to come out again this evening. And, you know, I'm up here to talk about the housing that we had when we were in Watonga, and I talked a little bit about before. And we had that house open for 5 years. As a matter of fact, it's still open today. And we had a lot of women that came through. Matter of fact, we had women that came to little old bitty Watonga from all over the United States. And we partnered with the drug court there in Watonga, that they would have women that would come in that would participate in our program. But I've talked to Jeremiah, and I like some of the things that he has planned for this program. And at our program in Watonga, we had a house mother that was there 24/7. And her job was to make sure that when the ladies came in, they had an application they had to do, and they had screening, and they had to go out and find a job to help take care of themselves in the house and then help take care of the food and stuff. But what we did is when they came in, they were always checked when they came back to make sure they didn't bring anything in with them. But in Watonga, our house was also in the community. For the 5 years that we were there, like I said, we're no longer there now. We're here in Enid, pastoring at First Baptist. But while we were there, we never had one single problem. And we had over 60 women that came through our facilities. And there was some that we were able to help, and of course there was some that was not. But as far as being a hindrance in the community, as far as having the police department out, none of that ever happened. Matter of fact, the police department worked, and the sheriff department worked real good with us when we had, when that program was open. But it was a blessing to those people, and it also was a blessing to us. I heard them talk about prostitution. We had a madam that came to our house that was from Oklahoma City. And she called me and my wife here about a year or so ago, and because of the program, she's no longer in that line of work, and she's got a husband, and then she also has a baby now. Then we also had another lady that was also there that was on drugs, had been sentenced to jail, and had her kids taken away, and now she has her kids back. So it's a good program. But like I said, I'm up here just to let you all know that I know Enid is not Watonga, and Watonga is a lot smaller town, but we never had one bit of problem with anybody in the community, any of the ladies doing anything or anything happening. Everything went really, really, really well, and I believe it can be the same here. And then I also would just like to say this: I know we have different opinions, and God did not make us all the same, and thank God He didn't. But at the end of the day, I hope that however it goes, that we can still be brothers and sisters in Christ. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I thank God that you all allow us to come and express our concern again. And just thank you all for your time, and thank y'all for what y'all do. Amen.
Thank you. Angela Green.
My name is Angela Green, and I live at 409 East Ohio. I stay around from the church. The house that the church is next to is my daughter's house, and my grandkids are there. And I want to just ask y'all's opinion. okay? If it was y'all's grandkids, would y'all want y'all's grandkids around people that you don't know that 50-50 good and 50-50 bad? I have a 2-year-old granddaughter that's just so loving. And I have a grandson, and they have a go-kart, and it is so funny. They get in that go-kart, and they go around that go-kart, and you see the little one, and she's just, you know, that's all you see her with joy. You know what I mean? I don't want nobody to harm them or hurt them because you don't know. I know a lot of people that have been locked up and a lot of people that's been on drugs, but some are delivered and not come back, but some of them have come back. Some have snuck in prisons, bringing men, pimps. I don't want those around my grandkids. That is something to think about, even though they might not tell them that they want their men around, you know what I mean? But they sneak their men around at night, you know, and they might harm my grandkids. They might sneak. It's a lot of perverts, you know what I mean? Child molesters. You know, it's a scary thing. You don't want that to happen. I pray all the time. I am a believer. Believe me, I believe in Jesus. I believe that he works in all types of things, you know? But I even prayed for y'all, everybody here, because everybody thinks different. But just think about it. If it was you staying there, I stayed there at that house, at that property for 15 years. But I let my daughter have it because she needs it for those babies, because I wanted them to be safe and have a yard to play in and don't have to worry about anything because it's quiet on that block. Anybody that lives in that neighborhood right there will tell you it is peace and quiet around that neighborhood. Nobody barely goes around that neighborhood. You can sit out there in a chair all night long, and you can see how peaceful it is around there. But when now it's going to be a lot of things that go on, even though other people might think that they might have it secure, but it's not. It's not. And that's the truth. Thank you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Tom Martins. All I have is your name. Not until it's your turn, please. Justin Parrish.
Justin Parrish, 2829 South Garland Road. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I came here tonight. I've never known what I was going to truly say any of the 3 times now, including tonight, that I'd speak. But one thing I think of tonight is, aside from the fact that I know we need this housing for women, not only do we need this one, we need several more. All thriving communities and cities have adequate transitional homes for both men and women. We don't have enough for men, but that's not why we're here tonight. We definitely don't have enough for women. They have to go somewhere. And the purpose of transitional homes is to transition people. To transition people, we have to reintegrate people. It's not just people from DOC. It's from people, for people from all walks of life. To reintegrate and transition people to the community, they have to be a part of the community. So they need to back up to somebody's door. We got homes across this city on the east side, the west side, right now, that back up to somebody's back door, and there's no problems going on. You don't see it in the newspaper. In fact, there's one on the east side of town over here. I did some research on it. About 15 years ago, the home right across the street from an Oxford house was bought for $70,000. It's on the market for $120,000. Their property value hadn't went down. I've heard that mentioned before tonight. So they're also, if you drive by these other homes, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know that's what they are, because they're not causing problems. They're trying to make a life change, and it takes a lot of effort. And each one of these different transitional homes that exist in Enid today, they all have a program in place. People adhere to it or they're out. They don't hang around. Think about this. It's not a domesticated situation where it's a woman and a man, or a partnership, if you will, where they get kicked out of a house. They don't hang around and come back. The police aren't called. They leave. So if there's a problem and they're not going to fit into a program, you'll see them leave. Not only leave, but probably leave town. These women that would be living in this house could be these folks' neighbors already. They're legal to live anywhere. They're not sex offenders. They're not going to be violent offenders. Some of them won't even be offenders. So I ask that you change this from R2 to R7. Thank you.
Thank you. Summer Parish.
Summer Parish, 2829 South Garland Road. I'm Justin Parrish's wife, and I think I've told you guys my story before, but just to go through it again, when I heard Pastor Wade announce that this home was going to happen, we were in Bible study, and I sat through the entire Bible study thinking, I want to be a part of this. I want to help these women. And my heart for that came because I was in a bad marriage and had to leave my home. And I had a couple of nights where I didn't know where I was going to go, and I had a young son. And unfortunately, I had parents that took us in, and it took me a while to get a job and get a car, and I eventually got my house back, but that took time. And if I didn't have that support system, I would have probably been living on the streets. When that happened, I thought about these women that go through these situations. You gotta understand, I have an associate's degree in business management and marketing. I was married to a man that had a bachelor's degree. These situations can happen to anybody. This is a great need. My husband has a Sunday school class, and it's made up mostly of men that live in transitional homes. And I've more than once heard one of them say, you know, I just lost my job and I don't have a way to pay my bills, and I'm just probably going to have to go back to the way things were, meaning they were going to have to go back to selling drugs or doing something illegal and go back to prison. But that didn't happen because they were in a situation where they had support and they could turn to somebody, and they got jobs quickly, and they got financial help to get them through the hard time. and they had people saying, don't give up. And if they hadn't been in that situation, then they might have turned around and gone back to prison. This is a great need. There are women that need this. I recently had a cousin that was in the major county jail, and before she got released, she had to give an address of where she was going to live. We looked for a transitional home for her, and there wasn't anything around. She had to give her son's address and ask him if she could go live with him, which he had just gotten out of prison, and that was less than an ideal situation. This is a huge need for women, and I just ask that you pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremiah Harrion.
All right. Thank you guys for being here tonight and being patient. I want to thank everyone for showing up and support, and for everyone that's watching online. I know there's a lot of people that's anticipating what's happening. I just want to address two things and ask if the commissioners have any questions after that. I don't think there's a need to break down the program again. We've done that with City Hall meetings and done it a couple times. If you have any questions, we can talk about that later. But, every journey, I think, has a beginning. And, how I was thinking about how we got to this, and it started 10 years ago. And, we've heard a lot of different things on how the people are described that are going to be coming into the program, prostitutes, ex-cons, women that we don't deem worthy to be in a program like this. And I get that because before I was a Christian, I kind of had that same outlook on people that were less than me as I looked at them. And I remember being in Los Angeles when I lived there, that, seeing the homeless, whether it's men, women, children, and just looking at them and stereotyping that, that's a deadbeat bum that needs to get a job. And that was my attitude and heart towards people that didn't work like I did or didn't come from the same background. And I remember the first time I was invited into an area where there was homeless people. And I was with a church group, and they invited me to walk down the street with them. And remember meeting this guy that you could smell from 30 foot away. And the guy, as we got closer to him, had maggots crawling all over him. And the guy looked dead. And I just remember that's horrific. I would never help a guy like that. But the couple I was with got on their hands and knees, and they loved this guy. And they started to share with him that there was a second chance, and that there was hope, and that there was someone that was willing to stick their neck out for him. And I just remember at that moment, there was nothing in me that would have ever done that. Nothing. I would have never done that. Shamefully saying now. But as I gave my life to the Lord and began a ministry down on Skid Row, I got to meet and know this guy. His name was Henry. And he was about 55 years old, African-American guy. And his story really wasn't any different than mine. He went to college. He had a job. He was actually a professional musician, which I wasn't, but he played for Janet Jackson. And I'm like, this successful man that went to high school, has got a college degree, guy on Skid Row, death is literally on his doorsteps. And he told me, he says, I came home one day, and I said, because what led you here? He says, I came home one day, my wife and my 2 kids, I watched them burn to death in a fire. My house was burning up. I said, man, I get it. I get it why you are where you're at. And you've heard the saying that all of us at some point are maybe one paycheck away from being homeless. And we can try to classify and put these women in groups, but the reality are they're women that are on hard times. And they're any different than any of us. They've had jobs. They've been to high school. They've had parents. They've got kids. And at some point in their life, something fell apart. Now, I could choose to reject them because of where they're at now, or I could choose to love them and help them through those difficult times. And that's what the Refuge at the Well is all about, is being there for them when sometimes no one else will be. And I believe that's what the City of Enid is about. It's about a community that's willing to be there for those that are less fortunate, to love them and to help them through difficult times. And so With that saying, my second point, if I could have my wife give the commissioners something, we were told we could hand that out. We have been able, thankfully, because we've been given an extra month to kind of prepare for this next meeting. Since the petition that went out last time, they had 19% against it. We were able to go out and actually do our own petition. We were told there was no need to turn that in because really legally there was no ground to stand on, but we could still present it to the commissioners. We had many volunteers from several different churches that were able to go out into the neighborhood and spent literally hundreds of hours petitioning and going door to door. The challenge with the Southern Heights neighborhood is a large percentage of the neighborhood is actually empty lots. And so tracking down some of the landowners was actually quite challenging to where it led us to making phone calls from California to Texas to Colorado. But I felt like that we were able to go out within the last month and prove to the city commissioners that the community is for that. We went strategically to the people that were on the last petition that you've seen in the first slideshow with the yellow dots. Unfortunately, that petition, if it was updated, would now be a lot different looking because three of the, I think it's 5 houses in the neighborhood that was in a 300-foot radius are now for that program, as you can see on the petition and the mapping that we marked in green. Many of the people in the quarter radius are now for that. And some of the people that did sign the first petition decided not to sign the petition that was against it or for it this time around because they wanted to stay in a neutral bias. Yes.
Can you bring up that map, please, from the petition, from the agenda? It's from the original petition.
So I think when you look at the yellow dots compared to the green dots, it's pretty evident that the community is actually for it. We are now definitely partnering with churches in the community that are for that. And so it's been a blessing to be able to go out this second time around and get to know the neighbors and some of the concerns that some of them had. With the first go around, we were able to answer those through the city town hall that we did meeting at Missionary Baptist, and then just by going door to door and talking with people. So I feel like at this point, with the community's support behind us and the overwhelming presence of them being here, that we've kind of went out and did the work that needed to be done. I know that some of the questions that maybe the commissioners had was that the Catalyst program that is by Meadow Lake is not a transitional housing. That's a prison ministry. And so something that we feel like the reason that rezoning is crucial for us moving forward is that there is only one other program in town, Macedonia Ministries, that actually has a house mom on location. With the rezoning, the reason we decided to go forward, as we talked to Chris, we were able to house 5 in this house, but with the rezoning, we believe that it's crucial because the success of the program depends upon that house supervisor being on location, which allows us to make sure that the women are getting to their jobs and make sure the women are getting to their classes so that their level of success is greater. And so if anyone has any questions,
I have 2 questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Irwin.
My first question is, have you made an attempt to reach out to the residents that live directly behind the women's transitional home?
Yes, my wife has reached out, and we had reached out to all of the red dots in that area. And one of the red dots on the far east side is actually empty lots. One of them that was halfway in the zone, the lady was not for it and had expressed why. We talked about that. The 2 dots on the far left are people that are now for it, and the dot that's up to the top in the red is a guy that decided not to sign either petition for this round. So we felt like we did as much as we could as reaching out to the people, definitely within the 300-foot radius, and then as time was available, we reached out to the areas around in the quarter-mile radius.
Have another question,
And
Dirk?
my second question to you is, what are you willing to do as far as, if this passes? What are you willing to do to secure that area and to try to make an attempt to make that family feel as comfortable as possible? How far are you willing to go?
Absolutely. So one of our biggest desires is the way the program is designed. So the program is designed to interview the women with people that are from the neighborhood. And so we're pretty open book on who could be on that interview board because we want the neighborhood to have an opinion or a say, like Anthony said, of who's coming into the program. And if the neighborhood doesn't feel safe with that person as they're going through the interview process, then that no means no. Second of all, the house mom will be the supervisor that checks the curfews, making sure the ladies are supposed to be where they're at. The building is equipped with security cameras, and it will be lit up very bright so that it's very light around that area. We have talked to the neighbors to the south that we would be willing to put in any type of fence that they would want, any kind of a design that would make them feel better and more comfortable about it. And second of all, we've talked to Missionary Baptists about us being willing to prolong the number of women to put in the program until the neighborhood feels safe with, if it starts at 5, if that needs to be a year, and then maybe move to 6 or 7, as we feel like we can handle that and we feel comfortable with the program growing, that we don't want to jump in to 11 women the first day that it's open. We want to take that as we're able to handle that and make sure that the women are going the right direction.
Reason for asking you, I live in that area. And I'm not just a representative of Southern Heights. I'm a representative of Ward 2. And for those that you all that don't realize how big my ward is, my ward goes from 30th Street, part of Brookside, the west side of Brookside, I'm the commissioner, from 30th Street all the way to Cleveland. From Warren K. Garrett, the mayor, he's in my ward. This is in my ward. The police department's in my ward. And it goes to Southgate Road. I have a really big ward. I have a lot of issues that I have to deal with outside of this situation. So my focus isn't just on Southern Heights. I signed up to make sure that I can do the best job possible for my ward. There's a reason why I'm saying this. I will not be controlled. I'm going to do the job to the best of my ability from my heart. That's why I'm here. And if you don't like the job that I'm doing, put somebody else in my spot. It will not hurt my feelings. But I love what I do because I love people. And I'm going to do the best job that I can do. My concern is for that family. My concern is for that family. My concern is for that grandmother that spoke. I'm not heartless, I have feelings. But I also live in that ward. And I have to deal with the same situation in that ward. So, in saying that, we need to be willing to do whatever it takes to help somebody else other than just ourselves. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about all of us. So as your commissioner of Ward 2, from 30th Street to Cleveland Street, Southgate Road to Garrett, I have a big responsibility. And also, I don't get paid for it. And we donate anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week, trying to do what we can to secure your lives and make sure you have the best lives. So if we can give up 40 hours and a little less a week in reading and making phone calls and dealing with issues, I'm also a business owner, and dealing with your issues, then we all be willing to help somebody else. we ought to be willing to help somebody else other than just ourselves. So, Jeremiah, if it passes, I don't know what's going to happen up here, but if it passes, this is not rigged. If it passes, I'm going to do all I can as your commissioner to make sure this thing does not fail.
Absolutely.
And I get tired of hearing what we used to do. What are you doing now? And if you did it back then, why did it stop? I'm not one to start something and not be able to finish it. Let's leave a legacy for our children. How do we make a legacy for our children? We secure their environment. And how do we do that? We fix problems. And we fix problems by not ignoring them. So thank you for allowing me to be your commissioner.
Mayor, I do have a question.
You have the floor.
There's been some discussion this evening about transitional housing for women, and I know there are several programs here in the community that are providing that type of ministry now. Can you tell me how many there are and how many women are involved in those facilities now?
I believe there's 3 other women's transitional housing, and I believe there's 2 or 3 other men's transitional housing. Now, the transitional housing, besides Macedonia, all those programs are led without a house director. One of the programs in town attempted to run a women's transitional housing without a women's director, and it was unsuccessful because of the need for a house director. And so, again, the number of women that need to be housed in this community are more than what we have in the community of Enid. I think a lot of people mistake that the housing or the prison system over by Meadow Lake, Catalyst, is actually transitional housing for women. That's not accurate. It actually is a prison, just like ECCC out on east side of town. So they're still incarcerated at that point. But with our men's transitional housing, 90 to 95% of the men that come through that men's transitional housing, they actually are not from prison. A lot of our people that we end up with are ones that come from the streets or come from bad circumstances that need an opportune time to be able to get on their feet, get some money saved up so they're able to afford their deposits and when they go into an apartment complex and different things.
So these women that are going to be coming into your facility, I'm assuming they're going to pay something for staying there?
Yes, so our program fee is $300 a month. And part of the reason, with the lower number of women that would be in there, it would not be enough to cover a house mom at that point. So part of the rezoning allows us to cover the cost of affording to be able to have a house mom on location.
And what if they can't? What if they can't come up with that amount?
So part of the program is we work with them on that. So one of the first things they do is they get their job. And so as they get their job, they're also going through classes to help them learn how to budget and save their money. So as they're getting their first paychecks, we help them set that money aside for the essentials, making sure they're paying for their program fee, their food, their fines, and different things they may have. And then as they work through the program, they're able to save up some of that money so that at some point they're able to transition on their own into their own apartment or housing situation.
$300 a month, is that room and board, or is that just?
That's everything. That's room, board, utilities, and it covers all their program fees.
And I assume they do their own cooking?
Yes, so they do their own cooking. The women's housing will be a little different than the men, that they'll have kind of a group kitchen so that they can go in there and cook meals together when they're having different classes and meetings with people from the community. The men are a little more on their own, but they do have their own kitchen.
How long do they get to stay there?
So
time limit?
Our program is 6 months, but we have extended that to a longer period of time because some of them have a larger debt that they need to get caught up before they're able to transition out on their own. So each case is kind of case by case. We have some guys that have graduated the program a couple years ago that are still living in the program, and they're actually now mentors for the guys that are coming into the program that are new. And so we hope the same with the women as they are going through the program, that they'll stick around and be mentors for the next women that are able to come through.
but this facility you're going to have is going to be limited to just 12.
Oh, yes,
Never
we will.
going to grow beyond
It
that.
will never be able to grow beyond 12 because the setup of the facility was designed for Sunday school classrooms. So the fellowship hall where they would have used to have meetings it's going to be their classroom / kitchen, and then the Sunday school classrooms will be where the women actually stay. And the rooms are actually quite small, so there's only a couple rooms in there that will be able to have 2 women, but most of the rooms will be set up for just single women. So we'll never be able to grow beyond the 12.
And you provide transportation for them to and from their work and
Yes, sir. We don't allow cars in the programs, so they're transported by the house director everywhere they go, so the men are able to transport them to work there and from. And at some point, we let them have bicycles so that they're able to get back and forth and work, but some of them work far enough away that it's too hard for them to get there on bicycle.
Any other questions? You want to hear from the rest of them?
I've got one question for Jeremiah.
Sure.
2 months ago when we talked about this before the last meeting, you equated homosexuality to alcoholism. You previously told me that being gay is just a lifestyle and that the folks who come to your ministry and are gay, that you tell them that there's something wrong with them, that it's a sin, that they need to change. Is that still accurate, Jeremiah?
Well, we don't tell anyone that there's something wrong with them. That's definitely not what we'd ever say. We don't discriminate against anyone. And actually, me and Sarah's background with the LGBT community goes all the way back into Skid Row, where we used to feed and clothe, help provide housing for them. We also worked with a ministry out there called Broken Hearts that helped with men that were transgender, that were prostituting themselves at 13 years old of age. But we've also...
But that's not the question I asked. The question I asked is what you told me 2 months ago accurate? That you consider being gay like being an alcoholic?
Well, I think to answer your question, Ben, is that you asked me if I was a bigot and I hated people. And that would be, and that is absolutely not true. We never ever would turn anyone away from any of our ministries. The women's housing, the Mercy House. We have many people that live in our facilities that we go out of the way to take care of and to love, because I believe it's the grace of God that can help anyone.
But you're not
now, do we want
the
to,
question I asked.
So do we want to debate a theology issue on whether what the Bible says or not? I don't think that's why we're here tonight.
The question I asked is, do you tell gay people that they should not be gay? Do you use the words being gay is like being an alcoholic? We help them.
We believe that the biblical interpretation, I will speak from the Bible, I'll speak from the Bible, that we believe that is a sin. We do believe that.
Okay,
but yet
that's enough.
But that does not ever hinder us from loving them or caring for them.
Adequate answer. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jeremiah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wait. Wade Burleson.
I was asked by Jeremiah and Sarah to speak, and I just want to say thank you. I live at 1112 West York, and Derwin, you are my councilman, and I'm very proud of you, very proud of the commission. I was here last time and heard all of you speak. It was pretty remarkable. You moved my heart. When I came to Enid in 1992, I'd been the Tulsa police chaplain for 5 years, from 1987 to 1992, and I was also pastor of an inner city church. I came to Enid because I wanted to raise my children in a community that I felt safe. I'd seen it all. My children are now grown and have children of their own, and I have stayed in Enid because I love this community and I love the leadership. I'd like to be very brief, but express my gratefulness to those who have opposed refuge at the well. It took some courage for you to come and to speak your heart and to stand here, because I know it may look as if you're opposed to helping women, and I know you're not. What is troubling you is where this is located, And let me just speak to that briefly. When Jeremiah and Sarah came here from Los Angeles 7 years ago, I asked if they would stay and do the work they do on Skid Row in Enid. And I think Jeremiah's initial response was, "What? We don't need that in Enid." I said, "No, we do." And to see what has happened over the last 7 years through their ministry is incredible. The Oasis, the Mercy House, all the programs, many friends of mine now are either in the Department of Corrections or recently out. We have probably 75 to 80 that I greet every Sunday. We're learning how, Mayor, to baptize them with ankle bracelets on because their lives have been transformed. It's incredible what is happening through these ministries. But back to those who oppose this ministry because of its location. We were given the building. That's all I can say. And I have been out at Southern Heights now over the last 7 years, painting houses, walking the streets, helping people, being at the Mercy House, the Oasis, and now this Refuge at the Well. These businessmen, doctors, if you look around, they're friends of ours. They are behind this. We're not going to let this suffer. When you say, Derwin, we want this followed through and we want it done with excellence. I have watched the family right next to this church. We're doing the electrical work. We're doing the remodeling. The transformation is incredible. I understand security. I understand what it means for grandchildren to feel safe. Your house next door is very well cared for. And I make a proposition to you. If you ever feel unsafe, if you ever feel like there's a problem, you come to my office, you ask for me. I will visit with you, and I will listen to your concerns, and I will tell you, you have an entire community who will stand beside you and make sure that your family feels safe. I want to close by saying in this room, she's given me permission to share, I'll not mention her name, is a woman who was arrested 17 times for solicitation in Dallas, Texas. She ended up giving birth to a boy and came back to our area to reclaim her son when she got out of prison. The transformation that has come in this woman's life through these ministries, both at our church, through Forgotten Ministries, is incredible. She's involved with Refuge at the Well, and she's leading a recovery program at our church. This woman is one of my heroes, and these are the kinds of women that we're reaching out to. Thank you very much.
Dwight Olson.
I'm Dwight Olson. I live at 113 East Hemlock. I want to thank you guys and ladies for allowing me the time to speak. And I want to let you know that 31 years ago, I served where you guys are sitting. I sit in your chair, Tammy, for 6 years. And Ron Jensen has not aged a day in 31 years.
I haven't gotten any smarter either.
I'm hesitant to follow a great pastor and speaker in Wade Burleson here. The only thing I would do would be take an offering, but I don't feel qualified to do that, okay? I'll be very brief. I appreciate your time and your effort that you spend. Spent lots of hours. I was here a month ago, too, and listened for 3 or 4 hours. I know we spent a lot of time considering things. When I was on the council, Phillips University was closing. The oil bust had hit in 1985. I started in 87. There was no money. There was no jobs. The city had just passed a 3/4 cent sales tax. We were the highest sales tax in the state, and we were buying Phillips University with public money. 13,000 votes were cast. It passed by 57 or 58 votes. Divided community. We had people in our audience every night looking for ways that they could throw us in jail, find us fault with what we did or what we said. The council was dragged before 2 grand juries. And Ben, you remember your dad. Your dad sat right where Mr. Woodell sat, and we stressed about a lot of that stuff. Those were big decisions in tough times. Our community was dying, and that 3/4-cent sales tax saved our university. It developed an economic development program, and it gave them seed money so that now we have a higher ed center that Northwestern University is located at right now. You know, things are a lot better now than they used to be. One of the unique things about this request is we're not asking for money. We're not asking for manpower. We're not asking for extra special consideration. In fact, we are willing to go through the whole process a second time and poll more people and do more things to communicate the best way possible what we had hoped to accomplish with this. How often does that happen? The decision boils down to whether you want to help just 5 women get their lives back on track or doubling that to 12 or 11. Ladies at that point can become productive citizens of Enid. They can get jobs. They can make good decisions with their life. And maybe eventually start paying taxes and making Enid a better place to live. How many opportunities can you double the effectiveness of a service or ministry with just 1 vote? That's what we're doing here tonight at Forgotten, or what we want to do with Forgotten Ministry. We want to help people do life and improve their life. I humbly ask for your support for the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Finley.
Thank you very much. My name is Barbara Finley, and I stay in Durham's ward, that area.
Barbara.
And I live at 401 East Indiana.
Good.
Here in Enid, Oklahoma. And I spoke to this council before that I also have 3 other additional properties that are located within the sphere of this program. I've said early on, I'm one of those people that see the benefit of programs that help people. In fact, I'll just give you a little bit of me. My whole life I have been helping people. And I come from, first, a Christian home. I am a Christian, and I believe in goodness, and I believe in right. But I have spent my whole life taking care of people. And I have seen people in all shapes and forms. If you put them in a hospital in the ER, I've seen them with the bullet hole in their brain, or I've seen them fall off a building and they're pierced by the rebar that's in it. And you do the best you can to save every life. And you know when you start, you may not save everybody, but you do the best that you can. So I just say that to you, that when you hear me speak, it doesn't mean that I don't believe in God. It doesn't mean that I don't have faith. And it doesn't mean that I really don't like these kinds of programs. Again, my whole life has been taking care of people. I took care of people in my private home, people who didn't know who they were. They didn't know whether to stand up or lay down or eat or not. But I took them in my home and my heart. So I know what it is to take it into your home and what it is to live with it and what security and safety for them and the public. So when I speak to you, I don't want you to be all upset when you hear I say that this shouldn't happen here. But I do want to say early that some of the things sometimes I say, they hurt. They hurt. They strike you like an arrow because they are piercing. So my first hurt is, Jeremiah, you're the best marketing person I ever known in my life. You are so skillful in manipulating people to do what you want done. And I say that here because we keep getting off focus of the development of everything that's happening inside the house until you're still forgetting the rights of the landowners and the homeowners. It is not the timing. You don't want to hear it. I mean, I felt like I was going to get shot down walking through this room because the most of your supporters didn't even say hello. Did not say hello. And they're going to be in my neighborhood. You understand? You're asking me to work for you guys and to vote for you, and over half of you can't even speak to me. That's what I have to live with every day. I live with it here tonight. I see y'all's faces too. People always hate for me to really come with my truth, but I'm telling you my truth. So you're very skillful, and I haven't seen one thing that we said or do that you don't get another chance to go out and change it to your flavor. And if you've been around and you've seen this kind of marketing work, you guys are like following the Pied Piper. This is my time to tell you how I feel. I speak against this because it is my belief that the homeowners that you guys never really sink into, the homeowners living within the sphere of this potential change of zoning from R2 to R7, the ones who really live there are trying to tell you they have a real concern about losing their rights as landowners. And that's a big problem, not only in Enid, but in this United States. But we have come here in good faith that we were abiding by your procedures and your laws established by your codes and your regulations of this city. We go out and do a petition, and we present it within the days that you said without anybody giving us a copy of how a petition ought to look. And you guys always talk about the poor little uneducated people that don't know what they're doing, but they did the best that they could to do a petition. And now tonight, Jeremiah could still go, and they did. They knocked on my door too. They knocked on my door too, trying to get me and my household to sign this petition in favor. And so they went everywhere, and you guys still let it get all up over these boards and stuff. And everybody else, if you didn't put it in 5 days before, you cannot get it done. Somehow, it gets so slick that it can still get up there. And I call all this stuff deceitful. But anyway, the established laws did require that those affected by this change should be heard and allowed to protest or support the requested change. And I'm going to go ahead, I started not to say some of these things, but participation in this governmental process is a basic right of its citizens who are affected by it. Such hearing and rights should never be treated as non-important. And don't jump off of y'all's chairs about how fair you are. I already know how fair you are. I know how loving you are. I know how patient you are. I know the hours that you spend into this too. And I'm not negating anything good that anybody did, but we still have to face our problems that we have here. And that is a true feeling of being treated as non-important, and many of you know that's been around in politics and how it's played, that this feeling of it's just a game that we're back up in here again. It's already a done deal. We just have to repeat ourselves because we didn't do a little piece of paperwork. That's a game that tells me that everybody has already made their decision before I get to exercise my right as a citizen to truly protest and hear it. And then what you hear, you then act on. But I can tell from questions of people that you already made your decision. And you ask your questions so it can reinforce what you want to get. So we spent a whole, however we're here, rehearing and rehearing about a program. The program itself is not what's being challenged. What's being challenged is the land right and the property owners who have a right to a feed-in for that and to be treated fair about that. The citizens' concern should not be diminished or disregarded or devalued or us be made to feel it's a major imposition about your low pay, your long hours, or whatever has impacted whatever we do here. But we are still, and everybody needs to be treated with respect as humans, as legal homeowners with rights, and there should be no personal attacks about your faith, your religion, your integrity, or any of those kind of things, or your personal biases even. The tirades against or for this proposed project should be looked at in the vein of we're talking about a zoning change. We're talking about a zoning change. And we're getting more argument about how good a program is than we're talking about a zoning change that homeowners have a right to speak for or against and have an unbiased counsel take that into consideration. So we're called on, all of us, to treat this earth and all that dwell within with respect. And I would say, I'll come do y'all some classes. Anybody that want them, teach you about respect, teach you about dignity, and teach you about how to get along with people. So we are called on, everybody in this room, to be truthful and honest at all times, not just for your affect, but for living in this world. We need to take full responsibility for all of our actions. Do what is right, no matter what you're told. I've got some sayings out there that religious people will do what they are told because they whip down with that Bible. But a faithful person will do what is right. A faithful person is going to do what is right. And the Bible can back them up for doing right, too. But they don't just do what somebody talks them into or what somebody sells them or what song plays to make them feel good. You got to deal with the real truth. And some things, and all of us, and I did too, I went back in Jeremiah's paper and picked up a lot of his words. When you say, we come here with all these things, well, it's based upon what we're reading about this program and what their goals it is. So first off, I want to say, in Southern Heights, where I live at 401 East Indiana, and many people that I know of in there, we're more than just your average Joe. I'll tell you about that. Okay, well, y'all can clap if you want to or not. But I know God tells me who I am. I am more than an average Joe. This neighborhood is important to us. We care deeply about this neighborhood. We've been fighting years for it. I was born in Enid, Oklahoma, and I've been in my home, on my home at 401 since 1960. Came back to Enid, tried to get somebody to help me expand it, and they didn't want to. But I did it anyway. I won't tell you all of what I had to go through to do that. But I didn't get no help from the city of Enid, I'll tell you that. But we have invested in improving the quality and did that way before the last 15 years. When I tell you 1960, and when I moved out of Enid and I came back every year, I did something to improve my property in the city. We've been working on it, doing all that we can. So it's not just that way now because Forgotten Ministry decided to invest in this neighborhood. Homeowners are the key to living in the United States and providing a sense of ownership. Not transition people, ownership we're talking about in here. They provide ownership and not transition. They really live on their property. Our neighborhood is not forgotten. It was deliberately mistreated. It was deliberately neglected. And if you didn't live over here and come up in here with my skin color trying to get some changes, you probably don't understand what I'm saying. Its dilapidated state came from benign neglect and a failure of this city to adequately support it. So I don't see no reason why I need a savior, and I don't know why your dream can be planted in my back door and be more important than my dream from which me being in here. And then I might add, there is also another transition unit, I think, very close in this area. Is that not right? It's also already another one. But I just want this commission to understand, we don't need a Cinderella story, and I'm not saying people don't need help. That's what we do. We help people. But it's land rights, it's homeowners' rights, it's your laws and your ordinances that we're trying to follow, your rules that say that you should hear us and you should take that into consideration. You had to do it with the people that were here before. You had to deal with people wanting to change their mind about the rules and regulations in the middle of the game, all of that kind of stuff from the people that come and go that serve this public. But I live off in here, and I will be buried in Enid, Oklahoma, and I will continue to fight for our community. You guys just don't even know what we fight. Just last night, I talked to somebody I took home, and I said, that house next door to you, how long has that door been open to that building? You know, do you know, is it safe for you to walk up to your doorway? Do you know who's in that building? Who cares in this city? I would say I care, and she did call to tell somebody need to check this out so I can be safe in my neighborhood. And I'm wanting my neighborhood to stay safe. I want it to be beautiful. I want to see Enid come in and infill some houses like you did over on the further east side. You put beautiful houses up, and allowed people to get in there that could really afford it. Jeremiah's, I love that people can come and get out of the cold. I love that they can come and get education and help. I love that you take people out and do it. But you can't buy us with a Coke and a hamburger. And you can't give us something with one hand and then take our wallet.
Thank you. Sharita Alatorre.
Okay. My name is Sharita Alatorre. I stay at 302 East Ohio. I am the people who stay behind the building that they're fixing. When they said that they came and spoke to us personally, they never did knock at my door, ever. Not once did they knock at our door. Maybe after one of these meetings, they came and gave a brief, hey, how you doing? Oh, that sounds good. And that was pretty much it. And I don't think it was to me, it was more to my husband. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you guys understand that, yes, I did see them around the neighborhood with their little petitions. And I'm pretty sure I seen Jeremiah. He never came and said anything or knocked at my door or any of his minions, okay? But anyway, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm like really going, I have 2 exams tomorrow in the morning, so I really don't need to be here. But by opening up this facility, Forgotten Ministries is putting our children at risk of potential sex trafficking. Just the simple fact that these women have been through this. I feel like I've already said this already about, these women having these issues, these mental issues. People go back. I have so many family members that have went back to the land of prostitution, to the land of drugs, to just roaming the streets. I have a cousin right now. and he goes to New York, and he just wants to be home. I mean, that's just where he wants to be. Not that he wants to be homeless, but that's what he does, all right? He's a couch potato. That's kind of what he wants to do. I don't want my neighborhood or my kids to see that. This facility has been placed next to a park, next to a field where children practice football, and in clear viewing of the Sandbox daycare. So for the families that do not live in our community, but their children attend the daycare center, are being exposed to these women and potential child predators. Me as a mother, knowing that this facility, yes, it's helping people. Yes, I understand where it's going. It just doesn't make sense where it's being placed with so many children, so many. It's just right in the middle of a community, besides the fact that he already has the homeless shelter in the back of the neighborhood, which is putting our families already at risk. And now he's putting this right next to a park. And then he has future plans of other things. Our neighborhood is being overridden with people that we don't understand and people that we can't really help as a community. I mean, yeah, we can, hi, how you doing? But what help are these women really getting? Nowhere is he saying that he's going to have a counselor, some type of educated counselor that has a master's degree to help people who have been beaten, abused, or any of this. They said after the last meeting that they, maybe a fence might be good, but that's not them guaranteeing that they're going to put anything up. That's just kind of like, well, maybe we could do that. It's not on record. Not to me.
Go ahead and do.
Not to me.
Give us your presentation, please.
Okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. She made me lose my chain of thought. Another thing I wanted to point out also is that, for his church and his churchgoers that are in support of this, like I said, I am in support of it, but he already has a building that he can use that could house 24 women or more, or it's somewhere in that number. He could house double the amount of women that he's fighting for today. And it's already rezoned. I just want you guys to understand that. It's already rezoned. We're not bad people. I don't know why you're shaking your head. It's true. Just check it out. But that's, I'm sorry. My mind is all kerfuffled now. But anyway, I oppose of it. I just hope and pray to God that you guys can understand that I don't feel like it's safe being where it is. I don't feel like they've really tried to reach out to us as community goers, as like the guy who was from Da Vinci's. He said he went door to door to talk to these people and to check and see what he could do to make it better. I really haven't. For the people who stay next to me, it's and me being right there, I mean, like it wouldn't take them nothing but a second to walk there, and they haven't even tried. And thank you, Derwin, for pointing that out about asking if they, but no, they didn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Valentine or Valentine Alatorre?
Valentine Alatorre. I live in 302 East Ohio. I got a little scratch. Usually I like to just say things on the fly. For the record, I like to say that I love all people, all sizes, colors, poor, rich, whatever. I love them all. I love them all. Okay? I believe we, as a family, the Alatorre family, we believe in second chances. We have criminal reform coming in place. That is a necessity. That is coming in effect. However, we're not here because of that. We're here for rezoning. So let's clarify that. We're here for rezoning. So if the law, there's no code enforcing that whatever he's trying to do, that he can open it up as of right now as R2, the well could open up right now. So it seems like it's being appeared that like he can't open it up right now. To my knowledge, he can open up right now today. And when he first got those permits, I'm pretty sure they're under budget or not. I'm sorry, excuse me. They're getting it done real fast. That's the bottom line. And all of a sudden now we're fighting it and stuff, my family and I, and the neighborhood, and there's not 90% of people that are against it that are elderly. It's more like 90% of people already feel that their voice is not gonna be heard. Excuse me. Those are the facts. The people do not want to come here because they don't want to sit here 3 hours or however long we was here like I was. I decided to not make money today and come and defend my property rights. That's why I'm here. I was scheduled to work, and hopefully they don't see this video. Forgotten Ministries has said that it's not financially feasible if they open it up as of right now as an R2. But remember, this is a non-profit organization. Their intention is not really to make money, it's just for a cause. So whatever the cause is just they need to make sure. And why would they even get permits if it wasn't rezoned? Me as an investor, if I was an investor, I would not invest in any property unless I know it had all the essentials to it. I would have a checklist. I would make sure all that stuff before I spend $1. Because those are just facts. Any business person is going to do that. The Da Vinci guy, he hasn't started remodeling. Why? Because it wasn't rezoned. What if he would have started construction, remodeling, and all that, and then come here and say, oh, I want to rezone as a C1. People don't do that, okay? So I have to use my common sense is what's going on. Now, this last time was null and voided, okay? That's where we're here again, null and voided. Now, according to the newspaper, it was nobody's fault. It was a mistake. Now, all good things come from God. That's one thing I do believe. When it did get voted on, I was kind of shocked that that's what God wanted. Well, that's what God wanted, and I took it pretty well, I feel. The next day, it was null and voided. It was a surprise. All good things happen from God. Man can do so much. But if God says no, we can fight it. But if God says no, it's no. We can come here all over again, I'm pretty sure. But if God says no, it means no. It was nobody's fault. And if it was, who knows what it was. But one of the things that does concern me is that it's not necessarily the ladies that are going to be in the program. It is the people that may be looking for the ladies in the program. Okay, so, I'm not afraid of a lady. Me and myself, I'm not afraid of anybody. Okay, we carry a firearm, not for intimidation, but for protection. And I have that right. Okay? Now, I don't want to use it ever. I probably came out a little bit wrong, excuse me, but we have those rights for a reason, okay? Now, I'm not always home at all times of the hour, and the people that it could be luring to this rezoning area, to the organization, we don't know who they could be. They could be ex-pimps looking in the sex trafficking ring. That's one of my main concerns. That's my main concern. So all this other stuff I say, it comes from my heart. But my main concern is sex trafficking. People come missing all the time, little girls, little boys, here in Oklahoma. And Yukon is one of the hot areas. And I do a lot of reading and research. I watch the news. I don't want Enid to become a target. Those people, those ladies, probably, I do wish the success for people, and we do want to help people. There's always a right place and the right time to do things. Now, putting it in the middle of a neighborhood, I mean, it's a no-brainer. There's a song, too, of that. And that's pretty much it. So I get a little nervous in front of public and stuff, speaking, but I'm trying to explain as much as I can. And my main concern, like I said, is to sex trafficking. Hopefully the department, Enid Police Department, could make sure that happens. And one more thing, whatever decision y'all make, if you vote no on it, I believe that it's not against your faith, because it's just rezoning. We're not saying that we don't want to help people. It's just a rezoning. That's it. So, clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it.
Is there anybody else?
We had 15 people sign up, and we've had a lot of discussion, and I think we would start repeating what the 15 have already said. Item 6.4, consider the rezoning of the property described as lots 1 and 2, Block 13, Rock Island Heights Addition, and lots 6 through 10, Block 17, Southern Heights, 2nd Edition, located at 301 East Iowa Avenue, from R2 Residential Single Family District to R7 Residential Multifamily District.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
A motion by Jonathan to
Second.
approve. Second by George. Further discussion? Would you repeat the motion?
Motion was approved.
The motion to approve. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-2. Item 7, administration. Consider an ordinance amending the Enid Municipal Code 2003, Title II, entitled Finance and Taxation. I'll go back and start all over. Anybody wants to leave, go ahead and do it now.
I'm not giving chances. Checking results.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
In case somebody wants.
State by law, which is
Sorry.
Not a
You can
problem.
practice your speech.
By a lot.
Chad.
Yeah, by a lot. Yeah.
I think we can
Well, I'll tell you what to exact.
The house will be.
George.
Beto O'Rourke.
How you doing?
Right? But it's. Hey, Chihuahua. Get a snuggie.
I'm gonna bring one next time. I'm gonna bring a snuggie.
Make it basic.
I'm gonna bring a blanket.
Let's
I'm
approve.
gonna bring my partner.
So that red determines how.
Oh,
If I did, I could sell it. Like, yeah. Somebody took one.
Yeah.
I don't care if you've turned the heater off, just
It'd
don't
be
have the air on.
like 20 more minutes max.
Just turn it all off for all I care.
Chief, you're dying.
Listen,
Working all day.
it was blowing cold air right on my
Stand up. Stand up and stretch.
Let's just get it done. Let's get out of here.
Please. For the love.
I gotta get up early and drive to Alvin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're keeping us away.
Yeah,
Good luck.
yeah. Thank you. I gotta.
I couldn't even think,
So you'll
all
be
I could
going-
think about
you'll
was,
stand
I'm
up
so
and-
freaking.
I've only been up since 5 after 5.
I couldn't even listen.
I woke up about 6 this morning.
Okay, let's get back to work. Item 7, administration. Consider an ordinance amending the Enid Municipal Code 2003, Title II, entitled Finance and Taxation, Chapter 6, entitled Fee Schedule, Article C, entitled City Services and Facilities, Section 2-6C-1, entitled Airport, to increase rates, providing for repealer, savings clause, severability, and codification.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Ben to approve, second by Jonathan. Further discussion?
Thank you.
Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Nice presentation.
It's worth the wait.
One of the shorter ones this evening.
It's worth the wait.
Item 8, consent items.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion to approve by Ben, second by George. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 9, we will now recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. Item 10, all of the trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority regular meeting are present. Item 11, the Enid Municipal Authority regular meeting is now in session. Item 11.1, approval of claims in the amount of $232,315.45.
Move to approve.
Motion by Derwin. Second. Second by George. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 12, we'll now adjourn to convene as the Enid Economic Development Authority. Item 13, trustees, that's my ward man over there. You had better hands than that, Derwin. Hope that wasn't your ring.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Trustees of the Enid Economic Development Authority regular meeting are in it, all 7 of us are in attendance. Item 14, the Enid Economic Development Authority regular meeting is now in session. Item 14.1, approval of claims in the amount of $4,000.
Motion to approve.
Motion by
Second.
Tammy.
Second.
Second by Derwin. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 15, we'll now adjourn to convene as the Enid Public Transportation Authority. Item 16, all of the trustees of the Enid Public Transportation Authority are in attendance at the regular meeting. Item 17, the Enid Public Transportation Authority regular meeting is now in session. Item 17.1, approve change order number 1 to RSM US LLP, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to complete the 2017-2018 Enid Public Transportation Authority Vehicle Revenue Mileage Audit, amount of $400.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Tammy, second by Derwin. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 6-1. Item 17.2, approval of claims in the amount of $172,706.45.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Tammy, second by George. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 18, we'll now adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Item 19, public comments. Diane?
Diane Levesque, 1324 West Oak, and I want to go home just as bad as all of you do, but I want to pick up what Barbara Finley left off as far as home ownership goes, because that is one constituency that Commissioner Norwood left out in his list of all of Ward 2 that he represents, and that he has to represent the property owners, and it's not just Mrs. Finley. The big issue that I saw that boiled down to all of these rezoning issues is why here? Why this property? Why here? And that's the same question that comes up with the casino. It's because the property owner has, as far as the property owner knows, has the right to sell his or her property to whoever they wish. Of course, the City Commission in total has governing power over land use, and Lord, don't I know that every time I run into the code department. But with the casino, we have a property owner that wants to sell it to the tribe. In this case, for the halfway house, we have a property owner that wants to sell to Forgotten Ministry, and it's their right to do that. And one property owner, in the form of Mrs. Finley, the question is, does she outvote with her multiple properties a single property owner in your ward? Anyway, the deal is that the city in total also has to deal with what happens with derelict buildings. We're looking at a derelict church that needs to be repurposed. We're looking at a almost unrentable house due to traffic. And that is also the City Commission's high priority, because you've got a lot of it. But on the other hand, it's also an issue that you do have commercial property blight. You can't go around calling it infill if you're repurposing a derelict house to a commercial property when you have so many unoccupied commercial buildings already zoned for commercial purpose. That will remain an issue for this entire commission as long as that exists. When you're looking for infill, you're looking for businesses to occupy business properties already zoned for commercial. So there's that. Still, how do you juggle these things? This is what we're looking at. For the casino, a property owner cannot just sell to a tribe simply because of the location and the property use it's going to prospectively go for. Being in a bad location too close to a natural feature that provides the storm handling for the entire city, or at least that section of the city where it does handle stormwater. I don't see a problem per se with repurposing a building for a coffee house either, given that it may be the only residential building that is in and already surrounded by commercial entities. But this is where we get to my neighborhood in the overhaul of Route 81. The overpass there. We have commercial entities already alongside Route 81. We have two de facto businesses running at 1304 is a bicycle business de facto, and what was a marijuana growing enterprise at 1304 and a half. And we do have one puppy mill. So those are not contributing to the intake and sales tax, shall we say, running unlicensed and such. Now, with the commercial possibilities of that particular area near US 81 overpass, you might want to consider a C1 to at least bring those entities that are doing business under the radar up to speed, perhaps. There's a matter of holdings, wanting to build a warehouse there, and that's why they bought the property, and that got voted down. But in doing that, you are going to have to consider the traffic that goes around there, the traffic that was an issue with the pot operation, that the streets, especially Polk, couldn't handle. And there was traffic going up and down the alleyways. That is the cost of the city for alleyway maintenance. There was a lot of traffic going down there, and there was traffic on the wrong side of the creek on the Holdings property, and that's not even paved. But this is what we're talking about. If you're going to develop, or if you're going to approve commercial use in a residential area or a residence for commercial use, you do have to consider infrastructure that you are going to have to improve.
Thank you. Item 20, we are adjourned.
Thank you for joining us for the Enid City Commission meeting. All meetings are broadcast on local cable channel 12 and in high definition on channel 112. In addition, the council meeting is live streamed on the web at enidtv.org. If you have any questions or comments regarding this broadcast, please visit the City of Enid website at enid.org.